Thanks, Craig. Chukma, Hashlaka Chukma. Good morning, everyone, from the intersection of Gabrielino, Tongva, Fernandino, and Chumash land. It is early for me here in California, so apologies for my not very not very sharp comments here, but I took Craig at his word about not writing anything new. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from my 2019 book, Incarcerated Stories, Indigenous Women Migrants and Violence in the Settler Capitalist State. This book is based on the oral histories of Indigenous women migrants from Mexico and Central America, who I met in immigration detention facilities in Central Texas. Virgilia entered the Hutto visitation room, looking pale and strained. We hugged, and tears came into her eyes as she sat down. Any news, I asked, already knowing the answer by her countenance. Her face crumpled, and she muffled a small sob with a sideways glance at the guard. Nothing, she said. Virgilia was awaiting news of a date for her credible fear interview, a crucial step that would put her into asylum proceedings and potentially, if she passed, allow her to get a bond out of detention. If she did not pass, she would be deported. Credible fear interviews usually happen fairly quickly. Virgilia's was inexplicably taking longer. She grew tenser by the day, worrying nonstop about the outcome and imagining all sorts of reasons for the delay. This day, she said, I think maybe they are not going to give me an interview. They will just send me back. I tried to explain that they have to give her an interview. They are required to do so by law. She looked unconvinced. I tried again. They can't just send you back. Virgilia's face crumpled again. And through her tears, she said, remarkably clearly, but what if they do? What if my case is lost and they leave me here forever? The Tiran Hutto facility, where the women I met for this book were detained, along with Virgilia, is a microcosm of larger dynamics of the carceral Homeland Security state. The CCA, the Corrections Corporation of America, now CoreCivic, built the medium security prison facility in 1995 as an income generator for the town of Taylor in Williamson County. It was reincarnated in 2006 as a residential facility for the detention of immigrant families, secured by chain link fences and patrol cars and situated in an empty field and a highway overpass separated from the town by train tracks. The facility is difficult to access and largely invisible to the town's residents. Conditions at the prison during its period as a family detention center included compelling children to wear prison uniforms, keeping families in their cells 12 hours a day, guards threatening children with separation from their parents, and failing to provide adequate nutrition and medical care. It quickly became an infamous symbol of expanded immigration policing, detention, and deportation. In 2007, the American Civil Liberties Union and at the University of Texas Law School, following on the advocacy of a coalition of immigrant rights and faith-based activists called Texans United for Families, sued ICE and DHS on behalf of 26 immigrant children detained with their parents at the Tiran Hutto Detention Center. The lawsuit contended that conditions inside the detention center violated numerous provisions of Flores versus Nice, a 1997 court settlement that had established minimum standards and conditions for the housing and release of all minors in federal immigration custody. Based on the understanding that holding children in the same conditions as adults was inhumane, the Flores v. Nice settlement agreement mandated that juveniles be afforded appropriate care and protection given their age and vulnerability, including that they not be housed in adult detention facilities, but rather in, quote, safe and sanitary facilities, and that they be provided fair opportunity for release on bond by taking affirmative steps to release them to appropriate family custody. Following the lawsuit and landmark settlement and facing continuing protests over the practice of family detention, the Obama administration virtually ended family detention, announcing that families would no longer be detained at Hutto. No new family detention centers would be opened, and only one family detention center would remain open, located in Berks County, Pennsylvania. The children were released from the Hutto facility, which now houses only women. Whether it acted in recognition of the moral sinkhole of immigration detention or in an effort to ward off future lawsuits, the administration undertook various efforts to create a kinder, friendlier detention experience for low-risk populations, principally asylum seekers. The Hutto facility was to serve as a model for this, and it was spruced up a bit with one row of fencing and razor wire taken down outside and cell blocks painted bright pink. However, Though the settlement represented a victory, both enforcing recognition that family detention violated the rights of minors and in securing their freedom during their legal processes, conditions for the women detained in Hutto following the lawsuit remained ripe for human rights violations. The women held in Hutto are isolated from their friends and families and still vulnerable to intimidation and abuse. The Hutto facility has been the subject of 2 federal sex abuse investigations, and in 2011, a former guard, Donald Dunn, pleaded guilty to federal charges for sexually assaulting detained women. All of the 9 women assaulted by Dunn had been victims of previous gender violence, and the assaults served to further traumatize them. The assaults occurred when Dunn was transporting women alone from the Hutto facility to the airport or bus station in nearby Austin. Documents obtained by the ACLU of Texas, which filed a lawsuit on behalf of the assaulted women in 2015, indicate that in addition to the 7 known occasions on which Dunn assaulted a total of 9 women, at least 20 male guards transported at least 44 female detainees alone between December 2008 and May 2010, making it possible that many more assaults occurred and went unreported. The lawsuit alleges that ICE, Williamson County, and CCA were deliberately indifferent and willfully blind to the fact that Dunn and other employees regularly violated the rule that detainees not be transported without the escort of another officer of the same gender. It characterizes the problems as systemic rather than a product of individual misbehavior or corruption. Yet ICE continued to tout the spruced up facility as a model and went to work constructing a new facility in Karnes City, Texas, about an hour outside San Antonio, as a low-risk facility built on the model of Hutto. Bright blue paint, apparently a nod to the fact that this was originally intended to be a men's facility, flat screen TVs in the rooms, a soccer field, and picnic tables on a bright green lawn characterized the new and improved Karnes. Like Hutto, it would be referred to as a residential facility, and we were told those who would be held here would no longer be called detainees, but rather residents. Guards would be called resident advisors. Taking reporters and advocates on a tour of the facility before it opened, eager to impress ICE officials leading our tour, asked our group with apparent sincerity, "We would like to have your suggestions. What else could we do to make it more comfortable?" An immigrant advocate, not convinced by the bright paint and shiny sports equipment, piped up, "How about a really big door marked exit?" The ICE officials were not amused, but the advocate has made its point. It was still a prison. So the exodus from, I examined immigration detention in Central Texas as part of kind of an overarching intersectional analysis of the structures of settler capitalism and how they play out violently in the lives of Indigenous women migrants. So many of you may recognize that what I was writing about here is really a previous era that was characterized by really prolonged detention periods and that often exceeded a year. And as a disincentive to other migrants, coupled with the highest levels of deportation in US history. This was the Obama administration. So in a more recent piece in a special issue of American Anthropologist on the Anthropology of White Supremacy, I argued that we should not be surprised at how white nationalism has resurged in the US since Donald Trump's election in 2016, because white supremacy, along with patriarchy, has been there the whole time. They're structuring logics of the settler capitalist state. So that's a larger argument I can't make here, but that's what I argue. And I argue that white supremacy is more or less visible at different points in time, largely due to the shifting needs of capitalism, and that immigration detention under the multiculturalist Obama administration was the canary in the coal mine of the crisis in neoliberal capitalism that would ultimately lead to the Trump regime itself and to the resurgence of open misogyny and white nationalism. So, and the point of that whole argument, of course, is not to say that we can't get rid of white supremacy and patriarchy, but to say that reformism isn't going to get us there, right? What's urgently needed is a much more radical revisioning of society that's not fundamentally premised on the dispossession and enslavement and capitalist exploitation that these structuring logics support. So just throwing those ideas out there. Thank you.